Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 866B, and today's date is January 13th, 2016, and the title of the episode is President Obama Continues to Push the Authorization for War to Get World War III Started. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, during the president's term, his two terms, from 2009 to 2015, he gave us many promises during his State of the Union addresses. And there is, about 140 or so promises that he gave. And I'm going to just go over a couple of them. If you want to see the full list of all the promises, you can go to patriotrising.com and see the full list. But back in 2009, 2010, 2015, he said he was going to cure cancer. Back in 2010 and 2011, he was going to freeze government spending for 3 years and 5 years in 2011. Passing health reform that will let Americans keep their insurance and keep their doctors. That was back in 2010, which that didn't happen. Actually, so far, none of it happened. He was going to stop the growing cost of Medicare and Social Security. Didn't happen. Make Social Security sustainable. Didn't happen. Close the detention center at Guantanamo Bay. Did not happen. Starting in 2011, government spending will be frozen for 3 years. Nope. Veto spending bills that don't adhere to balancing the budget. No, actually, he passed the last one. And it didn't balance the budget whatsoever. It increased spending. Go through the budget line by line to eliminate programs that we can't afford and don't work. Well, we definitely know that didn't happen. Secure America's borders. Totally did not happen. End the Afghan war. Well, actually, he didn't end anything. They couldn't get a bilateral security agreement signed by President Karzai, which was the president of Afghanistan. So they told the American people, actually, he came out and said, we're going to be withdrawing the troops. When President Karzai's term ended and the new president, well, actually, John Kerry, helped get the new president elected, he signed the bilateral security agreement, and the troops are remaining in Afghanistan. Actually, they're adding to the troops in Afghanistan, and the war is picking up once again. They were never leaving Afghanistan. He was going to end the Israeli-Palestine conflict. Well, that's gotten worse. He was going to destroy ISIS. Well, we know that's completely fake, phony, and false because ISIS is the proxy army of the United States government. Why would they destroy it? They wouldn't. Now, Gallup did a new poll, and they came out that 42% of Americans are willing to ditch the two-party system. They're saying that government is the biggest problem, and this percentage continually rises. And the part of where government is the biggest problem, that is like number one on the list. And everyone's starting to realize that government is not here to take care of us. They're not here to enforce rules on us. They're here to support the decisions of the American people. Government is the secretary of the country. They're not the rulers. They're not the all-power beings. They are here to basically handle our wishes. And that's it. That's all they're there for. Now, we realize that the Obama administration started the terror no-fly list, and the U.S. House of Representatives Judiciary Committee approved the No-Fly for Foreign Fighters Act that seeks to ensure efficient vetting of potential terrorists. Now, this bill will require an independent review of the operation and administration of Terrorist Screening Database, the TSDB, maintained by the FBI. Under the new legislation, the U.S. Government Accountability Office would have to review the no-fly list, determine whether past weaknesses have been eliminated, and implement additional changes. Now, Is this really going to happen? Are they going to explain how people get on and off this list? And what are the requirements to get on? Well, we'll have to see, and most likely no. Because we notice every time they say there's going to be an accountability office looking at all these things like the NSA, CIA, FBI, they just do everything in secret. And they don't tell Congress anything. And this is what we've been seeing in the past. Now, we talk about encryption quite a bit, and we keep on hearing the government and the agencies saying that, we can't stop the terrorists if there's strong encryption, we will not be able to break through it, so we need every company to give us access. I mean, France right now is pushing a bill where the government will have full access to all encrypted devices. And what's very interesting is there's a story out of Defense One saying that the Islamic State has built a secure messaging app with their own encryption. And like I said before, if you are a true criminal, if you are a true terrorist, you are not going to be making plans using Facebook, Twitter, the internet, using your iPhone, your Android phone to make phone calls. You're not going to do that. You're going to create devices, or you're going to make plans not using devices that the government can get to. They're just not going to do it. They're not going to take the chance. They'll create something on their own. Might be through paper, using a cipher. And we can see right now that the proxy army, the organization called the Islamic State, is using a specialized encrypted app to communicate with each other. Because, as we know, the government doesn't want the communication between their proxy army, their members, to be intercepted. That'd be ridiculous, because they would get information that, the government is behind all this. This is why they're using something encrypted, separate and apart from what the FBI, CIA, France, UK, and everyone else is talking about. What the government agencies really want is they want to spy on the everyday person. That is their main objective in all of this. And all of us need to protect ourselves. We need to use encryption. We need to hide our identity. We need to make sure that the government has a very difficult time spying on each one of us. Would you give them the keys to your home? No. Would you give them the combination to your safe? No. There's no reason to give the keys to your electronic data. Absolutely no reason whatsoever. There's no reason for them to track you. You can use a product like blockitpocket.com. These are interwoven sleeves with metal inside that blocks the signal. You can put a credit card in there that has an RFID chip in there. You can put your real ID in there if you have one that has an RFID chip. You can put your cell phone, your iPad, blocks the signal. This is what we need to do to say, you know something? You will not violate our rights. We are protecting ourselves because we do not give you permission. That's what you're really saying. Now, at this point, we realize that the United States government central bankers are trying to provoke North Korea. And we're not even sure if North Korea actually exploded some type of nuclear device which created an earthquake, because we have seen no proof whatsoever that they have done this. There's no radiation from the area, and so far they haven't given us any proof whatsoever. But of course that didn't stop all the different countries that are connected to the United States to reinforce that they're ready to go to war with North Korea. And then North Korea came out with a piece of video footage showing a submarine fired a ballistic missile. Now, we don't even know if this came from North Korea, because what we're finding out is that this video was completely faked. California's James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies pointed out that 2 frames of the video from the film show flames engulfing the missile and parts of it falling off before the video continues with the missile suddenly, inexplicably, fine. Not only did they alter the failed launch to appear like a success, but then they flipped the recycled footage of other missile tests to reclaim several successful launches. So it looks like whoever put this together, we don't even know if it was North Korea, they used old footage, they spliced and put images together to make it look like they actually have some type of missile that can carry a nuclear warhead, and it can be launched from a submarine. Now, this is all being pushed and being used for the upcoming war. It's propaganda to get all the nations on the same page, to accept military assets and to be ready. We see South Korea is continuing with provoking North Korea. North Korea was flying a drone, and South Korea saying, ooh, it came very close to the border. So they fired a machine gun at it. They shot warning shots. And they're making sure that North Korea knows, yes, we are here, and we're going to continually provoke you. Right now, the Pentagon is very excited because the troops were expelled from the Philippines back in 1991. And Pentagon officials now are very happy because now U.S. troops and weapons can be brought into the Philippines. And under this deal, the troops cannot stay there permanently, but they can be rotated in and out, and there is no limit on the number of troops that can be stationed there. So they can bring in as many troops as they want at this point. And we're seeing that troops are ready to arrive in the Philippines very soon. Now, out in Ukraine, Ukraine is hoping that they're going to receive $500 million from the World Bank so they can pay for gas. Because right now they're in the heart of winter. We know that Ukraine is no longer purchasing gas from Russia. We know they filled up their tanks. We know they've been trying the reverse flow of the natural gas. And it looks like they need to purchase some more gas because they're running out. As we know, the United States has been working with Ukraine, especially DHS, FBI, to look into the malware that was used to hack the Ukrainian power plant. And the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, along with the FBI, has now confirmed that yes, it was Russia. Russia, using the black energy malware, they did it. Now, of course, as we know, and we discussed before, that this black energy malware was created back in 2007, and many, many hacking groups use this today. But what I'm thinking right now is that this was a test. This is something they always told us about. I mean, going back to, the cyber Pearl Harbor or the cyber 9/11, they've been always telling us that there can be some type of cyber attack. They can hit the power infrastructure. They can bring down the power. I believe back in 2003 when I was in New York, working in Manhattan, we had that power outage. I believe that was a test to see if they could do it. And this seems like it is another test, and I think it has two agendas associated to it. Test to see if they can use a piece of malware to bring down the power infrastructure. Make sure it's connected to Russia. Second, they need to start the offensive in Ukraine, and this is a great way to kick it off, because now DHS and FBI has just proven that Russia did it. Now, we know this is a false flag. We know this is a complete setup. But former U.S. National Security Director Michael Hayden said, there is a darkening sky ahead of us. He said this is another data point of an arc that we've long predicted. So he's saying, yes, this is what we've been telling you, that Russia, China, North Korea, the Islamic State, they can hit the power infrastructure and bring down the power. And we are getting very close to that situation because we know this economy is accelerating. It's falling apart. It's looking at the worst it's ever looked. It's actually past the point of 2008. And this time around, it's not going to be pretty whatsoever. Now, the United States, they're doing whatever they can to provoke any type of war. And the warmongers are out there using anything they possibly can. And we know that there are 2 U.S. Navy boats that were intercepted by Iran because they were in their area. And the Iranian officials basically released the sailors. But think about this for a second. These two Navy boats, they have GPS, they have radar, they know exactly where they are. The strike group and the other ships know exactly where they are. How did they go off course? I think what they were trying to do is sail into this area, and they were hoping that maybe Iran would fire shots at them, and this way they could fire back. Or they were on a mission to do some type of false flag. And we can see right now that Iran kept their cool. They captured the Americans and returned them. Now, the U.S. apologized for this. Biden doesn't want to apologize for this. But we can see at this point that this was really done on purpose to try to create some type of an event. And it didn't work. And we can expect more to come. Now, John Kerry is out there saying that Iran sanctions relief will be coming in a few days. We're going to have to watch that to see if that really happens. And they're pushing this P5+1 deal forward. And we know it's not about nuclear weapons. We know this is about the central bank. We know that they want Iran's oil on the dollar. They want control of the central bank. But we'll have to see how this plays out. Now, the U.S. has sent special U.S. targeting forces into Iraq. They are now in place. And they're going to help the Iraqi forces go after the Islamic State. I really don't believe this. Basically, what they're there for is to make sure that what happened in Ramadi does not happen again. They're there to protect the Islamic State. They're there to basically keep the Iraqi forces from clearing out the rest of the Islamic State. Now, Cameron, out in the UK, he was grilled by MPs, and they wanted to know the UK's role in the Syrian crisis. And they were raising a lot of concerns and questions, and Cameron finally admitted that the moderate rebels overall were actually hardline Islamists. So he said some of the opposition forces are Islamist, some of them are relatively hardline Islamist. And what he's really saying is that these paid mercenaries are terrorists, which we support, which we tell everyone that they're the moderate rebels. No, there is no such thing as a moderate rebel. They're all paid mercenaries. They're all terrorists. So they asked him, which groups do these supposedly moderate rebels, the 70,000 rebels, belong to? He will not answer these questions. Neither will the U.S. Because they can't tell you, because they're all terrorists. Now, in the Midea food crisis propaganda, and we know a lot of these photos are completely fake, and it's proven that they are fake. But here's some questions that should have been asked. To whom are the villagers of Midea allied? If they are indeed anti-Assad, why are we seeing video footage of pro-Assad demonstrations and the citizens chanting, the Syrian people and the Syrian army are one hand? Makes no sense. If it is the SAA, Hezbollah, and the Syrian government imposing the starvation, why then do we see video footage of civilians arguing with terrorists and saying, we are hungry, not you? Why, if the Syrian government is not allowing aid into Midea, have we been told that the Red Cross UN entered Midea on the 19th of October with enough food to last 2 months? Why was the UN able to enter on the 28th of December of 2015 and evacuate 126 wounded terrorists if the Syrian government is not allowing this? The question is, everything that the corporate media is putting out and the Western governments, what they're putting out, doesn't make any sense as usual. It is pure propaganda. I mean, they told us that the Syrian government was using barrel bombs on its own people. The Syrian government was using sarin gas on its own people. It makes no sense. It wouldn't make any sense to do this. Now, the other question is, the Syrian government is accused of bombing its own people time and time again, like I just said. Then why did the Syrian government not simply bomb Madea, but instead allow food into the village and evacuated terrorists as part of the ongoing amnesty deal? All of this has been made up to convince you there's another urgent matter and Assad is hurting his own people. And when you look at this, you start to realize why they're doing this. Because they don't want to be a part of this peace deal that Russia is trying to put together. And you can see they're using this, just like the Yazidis in Iraq, where they had to bring in the troops. And now you don't hear anything about the Yazidis. It's amazing. But what they've done right now is they've created this case that Assad is not bringing in supplies to his people. He's hurting his people. And the Syrian rebel group now can say, okay, we are not taking part in peace talks this month unless humanitarian articles in the latest UN resolution were implemented. So you see what they're doing here. They created a situation, and now the opposition, the rebel group, can say we're not going to take part of this because look what Assad's doing to his own people, until he goes along with Articles 12 and 13 of the resolution that was passed last year. We cannot take part in the peace deal. And this is how they're getting out of it. We can see their agenda. We can see how they're making their move. And their goal is still the same, to remove Assad. President Obama was out there saying Russia is losing its influence in Syria and Ukraine. Even as their economy contracts, Russia is pouring resources to prop up Ukraine and Syria. States they see slipping away from their orbit, Obama said. Well, actually, it's the opposite way. Remember, whatever he says, it's the opposite. Basically, Ukraine is slipping away from the United States. Syria is slipping away from the United States. The United States economy is collapsing. The debt is too high. It cannot be sustained. And we can see right now, this is what he's really talking about, and this is why they need to go to war. During his State of the Union address, Obama tells Congress to vote for the authorization for war. He wants to send a message to our troops and the world. You should finally authorize the use of military force against the Islamic State. So here we are once again, trying to gain traction to push the authorization for war. They need World War III to be started. There's no more time. And Defense Secretary Ashton Carter comes out and says, well, the U.S. military might have to expand its efforts to target the Islamic State, not just in Iraq and Syria, but many other countries. Well, we knew that was coming. What other countries? Afghanistan, Libya, Yemen. So once they get this authorization for war, guess what? They're going into these other countries, and we're going to kick off World War III. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.